Shalom, shalom, peace and blessings. Now let's get straight into it. So now we're back into Daniel chapter 11. And look, I know it's been a minute. It's been about 5 or 6 months actually since we had our last installment of Daniel chapter 11, but I didn't forget about it. I had some other things that I was working on. Got those lessons out. Now we're back here. We will finish up. All right. In the last installment, I believe we ended at verse 17. And we will go all the way down to, I believe, verse 45. Yeah, verse 45. So we will finish up. And Lord willing, within the next two installments. It won't be this one, but I know at least by the next one we may be able to finish. Because from verses 21 all the way down to verse 45, it's actually about the same wicked mug, which is Antiochus the Fourth Epiphanes. So if you read the book of Maccabees in the Apocrypha, it's a must read, really. If you aren't familiar with the Apocrypha, then you need to go ahead and grab that. But if you read the book of Maccabees, either the first or second, of course, read both. But if you at least read chapter 1, verse 1, First Maccabees chapter 1, then you already are familiar with who Antiochus the Fourth Epiphanes is. So that's who the scriptures is referencing here in verses 21 all the way on down. And that's how much wickedness he did in his rather short reign. So we will get to all of that. We do have to finish up here with his father, which is Antiochus the Third, or Antiochus the quote-unquote great. And then we'll grab a little bit on Antiochus the Fourth, and then we'll finish out, Lord willing, in the next installment. If not, it should at least only be one more, depending on how we break it down. All right, but that's pretty much it. Oh, and the last thing, so I do still have this Microsoft Word spreadsheet here going over the whole chapter, essentially, breaking down each one of the different, breaking down each verse and, what it meant, what the prophet meant, when he wrote these things down as far as history goes. So I will make that available. And once it's complete and we go through either the next installment or at least one more, I'll make that available to you guys. I may do it either in a Google Drive or just some way where you can click the link and you'll have access to it. I'm going to spruce it up a little bit too. I'm going to put the historical source, where the information even came from, the ancient historians. The information ultimately came from the Most High, but meaning where you can just source it from a historical standpoint. The direct information, meaning how you can get to it quicker, like in Wikipedia or something to that extent, and the scriptures too as well. So we can see that reference there. All right, and again, I will make that available once it's complete and the actual lesson is complete. But other than that, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on in. So let's start at verse 18. It says here, Daniel chapter 11 and verse 18. We did start, at 18. After this, shall he turn his face unto the isles, and shall take many. But a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. Without his own reproach, he shall cause it to turn upon him. Okay, let's read verse 18 one more time. It says, after this shall he turn his face up unto the isles. So now let's get that really quickly. Here in the Wikipedia article on war against Rome and death concerning Antiochus III, it says Antiochus then moved to Asia Minor by land and by sea on the Isles to secure the coast towns which belonged to the remnants of Ptolemaic overseas dominions and the independent Greek cities. So he actually took these cities by sea. So when it says here, after this shall he turn his face unto the isles and shall take many, that's what it's referring to. And it says, but a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. Let's keep reading and see who this prince is. This enterprise earned him the antagonism of the Roman Republic, since Smyrna and Lapsacus appealed to the Republic, which at the time acted as the defender of Greek freedom. The tension grew when Antiochus in 196 BC established a footing in Thrace. The evacuation of Greece by the Romans gave Antiochus his opportunity, and he now had the fugitive Hannibal at his court to urge him on. So Hannibal was actually an advisor to Antiochus III. And if you're not familiar with Hannibal, first of all, this is not an accurate depiction of Hannibal. Okay. Hannibal was a so-called black man. He was a Phoenician. Okay. Or a Carthaginian, which is really just a Phoenician. Okay. Or the Punic people, which is just a Greek word for Phoenician. All right. These were so-called black people, or more specifically, mainly Canaanites. They had some Israelite admixture, but mainly the Punic people or the Carthaginians were Canaanites. And we know the Canaanites are so-called Africans. Okay? So Hannibal was a so-called black man. So this picture is nonsense, just like a lot of these pictures are, of course. It says Hannibal was a Carthaginian general and statesman who commanded the forces of Carthage in their battle against the Roman Republic during the Second Punic War. Hannibal's father, Hamilcar Barca, was a leading Carthaginian general during the First Punic War. But we don't have to go all the way into Hannibal here, but Hannibal was a great military mind. All right, and he ended up actually being an advisor, says it here. Yeah, during this time, he lived at the Seleucid court, where he acted as military advisor to Antiochus III, the Great, in his war against Rome. Antiochus met defeat at the Battle of Magnesia and was forced to accept Rome's terms, and Hannibal fled again, making a stop in the kingdom of Armenia. Okay, so Hannibal is considered one of the greatest military tacticians and generals of antiquity, alongside Philip of Macedon, Alexander the Great, Leonidas, Cyrus the Great, Julius Caesar, Scipio Africanus, and Pyrrhus. Okay, according to Plutarch, Scipio asked Hannibal who the greatest general was, to which Hannibal replied, either Alexander or Pyrrhus, then myself. So, he had the military on lock. He was a great military mind, to where he was actually advising Antiochus III, which, as we see, Antiochus III, he had been in many battles at this point in time. And we're going down towards the end of his life, because he about to come to an end here soon, which is gonna give rise to both of his sons. But we're gonna get that in a second. But let's go here. So this is the Real History www.com page on Hannibal. Now, realhistorywww.com. This is a great resource for history. Not so much on the scriptures per se and how that relates to history, because it seems that the brother hasn't fully embraced the scriptures. Man, if he did, wow, this really be something else. But it's really something else either way. The brothers did a great job either way. But it says here, Hannibal, triumphant coin of Hannibal. Note, there is no known authentic images of Hannibal, and there is no proof that Carthaginian coins show his likeness. However, these coins do exist, and logically, who else but the great Hannibal would they put on a coin? Certainly not an ordinary elephant rider. Yeah, it makes sense to me too. So, although we cannot confirm that this is Hannibal, it's likely him, because just like with any coins, no nation put just ordinary men on coins and made statues of ordinary men. You know, it's kind of like in the NBA where they make these statues of, like, who all got a statue at this point. I know Michael Jordan probably got one. They gonna make LeBron one. I think Shaq got one or something like that. But they ain't gonna make no statue of Rashad McCants. Now, are they? I'm just saying, they ain't gonna make no statue of Derek Fisher, even though he was a great supplementary piece for a lot of Lakers championships. He didn't get his own statue, and that's actually a lot more than just saying an ordinary man, because at least these men were in the NBA. But anyways, the whole point is they don't put ordinary men. That's not just for. I'm not saying that just for Hannibal. Also, for the so-called white man, for his excuse when he says that slaves are in these statues there in Europe and these busts and things like that, trying to act like, oh, these were slaves. No, they weren't. You don't put slaves in prominent positions like that, or you don't create art of slaves. But anyway, so what I'm getting at too is you see the Negroid features, right? See the nose, you see the lips. Yeah, he was a so-called black man, so this depiction here is nonsense over here. Okay, and they know that the Phoenicians were so-called black. They know that. So even in this description here, the Capuan bust, reputedly of Hannibal, originally found in the ancient city-state of Capua in Italy. They know it's nonsense, but yeah, he was a great military mind. Okay, let's go back to the point. It says in 192 BC, Antiochus invaded Greece with a 10,000 man army and was elected the commander in chief of the Aetolian League. In 191, however, the Romans under Manius Acilius Glaberio routed him at Thermopylae, forcing him to withdraw to Asia Minor. The Romans followed up their success by invading Anatolia, and the decisive victory of Scipio Asiaticus at Magnesia and Supplium, following the defeat of Hannibal at sea offside, delivered Asia Minor into their hands. So that's that reproach being taken away. So it says here, and he shall take many. Well, actually, let me go to the form. It says here, but a prince for his own behalf. That prince was Scipio Asiaticus. Okay, and a prince for his own behalf. So he didn't do it for Rome. He didn't battle Antiochus and the Seleucids for the love of his country. He did it for his own glory. All right, because he wanted that same glory that Scipio, his brother, he wanted that same glory his brother Scipio Africanus had over his battles with Hannibal of Carthage, who we just read about, Hannibal, the Carthaginian general. Okay, reproach offered by him to cease, which we about to read about that. It says, without his own reproach, he shall cause it to turn upon him. So this is that reproach. Remember when Antiochus III, when he went to the Aegean Sea, he did take many of the isles there. He had that turned over to the side. Let's read that. Okay, it says, by the Treaty of Apamea, Antiochus abandoned all the country north and west of the Taurus Mountains, most of which the Roman Republic gave either to Rhodes or the Attalid ruler Eumenes II. Its allies, many Greek cities, were left free. As a consequence of this blow to the Seleucid power, the outlying provinces of the empire, recovered by Antiochus, reasserted their independence. Okay, so let's get this Treaty of Apamea. So I think that, let's see. Yeah, let's get that next. It says the Treaty of Apamea. The Treaty of Apamea was a peace treaty conducted in 188 BC between the Roman Republic and Antiochus III, ruler of the Seleucid Empire. It ended the Roman Seleucid War. The treaty took place after Roman victories at the Battle of Thermopylae in 191 BC, the Battle of Magnesia in 190 BC, and after Roman and Rhodian naval victories over the Seleucid navy. So those were the two major battles of the Roman Seleucid War: the Battle of Magnesia and the Battle of Thermopylae. Okay, these are the last battles pretty much that Antiochus III took place in over the Romans. Because, if you go back in the chapter in Daniel chapter 11, most of his battles were against the Ptolemies or the kings of the south. But now, Antiochus III, he getting into it with the Romans, which it didn't end well for him. It says this treaty, according to Appian, obliged Antiochus III to abandon Europe altogether and all of Asia west of the Taurus Mountains. He had to surrender all the war elephants in his possession and was limited to 12 warships for the purpose of keeping his subjects under control. So Hannibal had a lot of war elephants with him. They still don't know exactly, where he got the elephants from. Some say it was like, we do the research on it, on Hannibal's accounts. You see that some of the elephants may have been extinct now. Got them from Africa. They're not really sure how he got his war elephants, but they were essentially like today's tanks, the war elephants were. But Antiochus III, he had to surrender all of them, man. Antiochus, we had to finish this out. But he was allowed to build more if he was attacked. Antiochus was barred from recruiting mercenaries north of the Taurus, that is, from territory just ceded to Roman allies, Pergamon and Rhodes, and entertaining fugitives from the same. Antiochus had to give, check this out, Antiochus had to give 20 hostages, whom the Roman council would select. One of those hostages happened to be his son, Antiochus Epiphanes IV. Okay. The hostages should be changed every third year, except the son of Antiochus. He kept that little nigga there. In the future, he would maintain no elephants. So this was a death sentence for really eventually the whole Seleucid Empire, but also for Antiochus III. Like this was it for him. These terms of this treaty was just, it was just way too much, as we're about to see. It says here the Seleucids were forced to pay an indemnity of 15,000 talents of silver of debt. So when it says 15,000 talents of silver of debt, that may not seem like that much, but according to different resources I've seen, it doesn't look like there is a made upon standard for exactly how much money that would be today. Some sources say that one talent would be $1.4 million USD today. And I looked at this. It says Testament Press LLC, testamentpress.com. According to them, which the calculation is a little funky because it says it's based off of a minimum wage of $7.25. But just to get a rough estimate here, the whole point is that this is $3 billion. 15,000 talents, Roman talents at that time. So whatever it was, we know it was a lot. It had to be in the millions, minimum. It had to be in the billions. I mean, in the millions minimum. It could have been in the billions too. How much that the Romans charged Antiochus III with in the Seleucid Empire. which was really, again, the beginning of the end for them, because it really caused a lot of strife in their kingdom up to that point. And that's what his son Seleucus the Fourth. That's really all he did throughout his reign was try to collect some money to pay this debt off, man. It remind me of Germany through World War One, which really ended up leading to World War Two, at least on paper. It was all scripted, but anyways, or what the scriptures call the first and second woe. But anyways, I believe we were at the Treaty of Apamea. Yeah, so they had to pay 500 Euboic talents immediately, 2,500 more when the Roman Senate ratified the treaty, and installments of 1,000 talents, each to be delivered to Rome annually for the next 12 years. Dang, these boys on the car know 1,000 each year. The Seleucids also agreed to a indemnity of 540,000 modi of corn. I'm not sure how much a modi is, to be honest, but I know it has to be a lot because it's 540,000 of them. The boys ate corn all year. He was also forced to surrender all prisoners and deserters to his enemies, and to Eumenes II, the king of Pergamum, whatever remains of the possessions he acquired by his agreement with Attalus I, the father of Eumenes. So this is what it means here when it says, without his own reproach, he shall cause it to turn upon him. So his conquering of the isles, that reproach was turned upon him being Antiochus III. Then it says, then he shall turn his face toward the fort of his own land, because he returned back to Antioch. All right. I think we got everything. Antiochus III was forced to pay heavy tribute to Romans to get the Roman hostages, which included his son Antiochus Epiphanes. So now verse 19. Let's read that first. Then he shall turn his face toward the fort of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and not be found. In the scriptures, when it says and not be found, that's normally referring to death. All right, when it says not be found, that's like saying the word not, and he is not. That normally means death or giving up the ghost. These are all different ways of saying someone died. So this is referring to his death, where it says he shall turn his face toward the fort of his own land, because he did return back to Antioch. He fled to Antioch. And then when it says he shall stumble and fall and not be found, Antiochus III was killed trying to rob the temple of Baal in Elymas. All right, let's finish that out here. Antiochus mounted a fresh eastern expedition in Luristan, where he was killed while pillaging a temple of Baal at Elymas, Persia, in 187 BC. So since he had those heavy taxes levied upon him and that debt that he had to pay to Rome, he was trying to get some money. So he was trying to rob this temple of Baal, which is a pagan god, Baal, or Baal, which Baal and Baal are not the exact same, but I mean pretty much the same. We read about Baal in the scriptures, which is still worshipped today, by the way. Definitely still worshipped today. But he was trying to rob the temple of Baal, and then he was killed. So that's the end of the father of Antiochus IV Epiphanes, Antiochus III. His account started at around verse 11 in Daniel chapter 11. Okay, when it says here, even the king of the north, that was the beginning of the account of Antiochus III. But if you went back and listen to the first installments of Daniel chapter 11, you'll know that, or if you already know it on your own, of course. Yeah, that was the beginning of Antiochus III. Now, we're going to move forward and talk about his son that reigned in his stead. Okay? In verse 20. And when I say his son, his eldest son, not Antiochus the fourth, just as of yet. Now let's get verse 20. So in verse 20 it says, "Then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom. But within few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle." So when it says a raiser of taxes, it's referring to Seleucus the fourth, Philopater. Okay, this is Antiochus' second son that reigned in his stead after his death. His death meaning Antiochus the third's death. Okay, that we just read about in 187 BC. Okay, so Seleucus the fourth, he reigned for a short time before Antiochus Epiphanes. Okay, and where it says a raiser of taxes, Seleucus collected money from the Treaty of Apamea by raising taxes on the cities of Cilicia, Phoenix, and Jerusalem. And that account is in 2 Maccabees chapter 3. So let's get there real quick. 2 Maccabees, I say chapter 3. Yeah, 2 Maccabees chapter 3. Let's see. Let's start at the top. 2 Maccabees chapter 3. Now when the holy city was inhabited with all peace, and the laws were kept very well, because of the godliness of Onias the high priest and his hatred of wickedness, it came to pass that even the kings themselves did honor the place, and magnify the temple with their best gifts, insomuch that Seleucus king of Asia, of his own revenues, bear all the costs belonging to the service of the sacrifices. But one Simon of the tribe of Benjamin, who was made governor of the temple, fell out with the high priest about this order in the city. So they fell out. That's interesting that they use that fell out. As we say that today. Verse 5, and when he could not overcome Onias, he gave him at Apollonius, the son of Thrasias, who then was the governor of Cilicia and Phoenix, and told him that the treasury in Jerusalem was full of infinite sums of money, so that the multitude of their riches, which did not pertain to the account of the sacrifices, was innumerable, and that it was possible to bring all into the king's hand. So when Seleucus IV, remember again, they owed, possibly millions, hundreds of millions in today's currency to the Romans. So they hearing about in Jerusalem that we got that bread over there. We got whatever folks say today. We got the stacks. We got the whatever. We was paid. All right. So Jerusalem. That's why we shouldn't be worried about no doggone reparations. That's why we shouldn't be worried about no reparations, man. Jerusalem was full of infinite sums of money. I mean, it can't be counted. It's innumerable, as the scriptures say here in 2 Maccabees chapter 3 and 6, man. Innumerable. So what you want a reparation for? So somebody can pay you $1,000 piece and then you be mad. Our stimulus checks is more than that. Donald Trump gave us more than that. And then if you get 10,000, you'll be like, "Oh, that's all our life worth. 10,000, you think you'll buy us all?" If it's 100,000, that ain't gonna happen. Because there's too many so-called black people. All right, so y'all that be worried about reparations, it just it's really something else. But also, Let's read verse 7. It says, Now when Apollonius came to the king and had showed him of the money whereof he was told, the king chose out Heliodorus, his treasurer, and sent him with a commandment to bring him the foresaid money. So Heliodorus, he was um, he was the cat that was chose to go in. He was the treasurer for the Seleucids. He was told to go in and be, the tax collector for the different nations, for Cilicia, so for their own people, for Phoenix, and for Jerusalem. Okay, so forthwith Heliodorus took his journey under a color of visiting the cities of Cilicia and Phoenix, but indeed to fulfill the king's purpose. And when he had come to Jerusalem and had been courteously received of the high priest of the city, he told him what intelligence was given of the money and declared wherefore he came. It says, and asked if these things were so indeed. Then the high priest told him that there was such money laid up for the relief of widows and fatherless children. Let's skip down a little bit, verse 13. But Heliodorus, because of the king's commandment given him, said that in any wise it must be brought into the king's treasury. So at that day which he appointed, he entered in to order this matter, wherefore there was no small agony throughout the whole city. So we knew that we were having taxes levied upon us, so we ain't never been with that. But the priests, prostrating themselves before the altar in their priests' vestments, called unto heaven upon him that made a law concerning things given to be kept, that they should safely be preserved for such as had committed them to be kept. Okay? So the Most High did save us from this. By the way, so verse 22, they then called upon the Almighty Lord to keep the things committed of trust safe and sure for those that had committed them. Verse 23, nevertheless, Heliodorus executed that which was decreed. Now as he, verse 24, was there present himself with his guard about the treasury, the Lord of spirits and the Prince of all power caused a great apparition, so that all that presumed to come in him with him were astonished at the power of the Most High and fainted and were sore afraid. Could this be Yahweh Shai too as well? Verse 25, for there appeared unto him a horse and a terrible rider upon him, and adorned with a very fair covering, and he ran fiercely and smote at Heliodorus with his forefeet, and it seemed that he that sat upon the horse had complete harness of gold. Okay? Again, either Yahweh Shai and some angels, or just some angels, either way, this is what stopped Heliodorus from coming in and taking all our bread. Taking all our numerous sums of money. Okay, because they were under pressure from the Romans. Okay, moreover, 2 other young men appeared before him, notable in strength, excellent in beauty, and comely in apparel, that stood by him on either side, and scourged him continually, and gave him many sore stripes. And Heliodorus fell suddenly to the ground, and was compassed with great darkness. But they that were with him took him up and put him into a litter. Okay, so this is the account. We could keep going, but this is the account where Heliodorus came in essentially to take our innumerable sums of money, all right, out of the treasury, because again, the Seleucids, they had a hefty fee to pay the Romans in the Treaty of Apamea, which resulted from the losses of Antiochus III at the Battle of Magnesia, and prior to that, the Battle of Thermopylae. Okay, so that's what verse 20 is in reference to. It's concerning that. Seleucus the fourth. All right, it says, there shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, because he didn't rule that long. That's why it says before a few days. Okay, only reigned around 12 years. It says, neither in anger or in battle. He was killed or poisoned by Heliodorus, and not in battle like the other Seleucid kings. So it was relatively a peaceful time during his rulership, him being Seleucus IV. Okay, because throughout his time, he was pretty much just there trying to collect taxes, and that was pretty much it. Okay, and another thing about Heliodorus that's interesting is that Antiochus the third, his son, which is the wicked one, Antiochus the fourth Epiphanes, his son was a hostage in Rome. Heliodorus traded his son for Antiochus the fourth. Okay, it says it right here. He also substituted his son Demetrius instead of his brother Antiochus the fourth as a hostage in Rome. Okay, so Demetrius was Heliodorus' son. And it says here, death. On September 3rd, 175 BC, Seleucus was assassinated by Heliodorus, one of the leading bureaucrats. The ancient sources do not record a motive for this act. Possibly it was simple lust for power, or possibly the sources misattributed the death to the one who gained the most from it. Heliodorus took over as regent, ruling on behalf of Seleucus IV's young son Antiochus. Heliodorus' reign as regent was brief. However, months later, he was replaced by Antiochus IV with support from Pergamon. Okay, so that's the account on Seleucus IV Philopater. So he ruled from 187 BC to 175 BC. So that's why it says for a few days, especially in comparison to Antiochus III. Antiochus III ruled for, I believe, 37 years. We go up here. So, yeah, 36 years. So, compared to that, that's only a third of the time. All right. And I'm trying to see, is there anything else notable about him? Not really. So you see Heliodorus try to come in, collect the taxes. He traded his own son, Demetrius the First, Soter, which he was supposed to be the rightful ruler of the kingdom, but we're actually gonna get that next. See where we at. Okay, we actually gonna close this out soon because, as mentioned earlier, since verses 21 is all from verses 21 down to 45 is all about Antiochus IV. We want to pretty much cover most of that in the same installment, but we'll at least start out here. Verse 21, here we go. And in his estate, meaning Seleucus IV, or in the state of the Seleucid Empire, shall stand up a vile person, to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. Okay. So let's get that real quick. In First Maccabees chapter 1. And let's start at, because we've read First Maccabees 1 and 1 several times. We just got the reading on the last lesson that I did, but let's go here, start at verse 9. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves, so did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. And that's why we're reading about this. You know, the more you read the historic aspect of the scriptures like we're doing right now, you start to understand more and more how the scriptures are only telling us about these men because of their impact. Well, I'm not going to say the only reason, but one of the main reasons that we have these accounts in the scriptures is because of the impact that it had on Israel. Because there are, an innumerable amount of other kingdoms and kings that ruled between, the time of Daniel to now that could have been accounted for. Look at all the different pharaohs that aren't mentioned in the scriptures at all. You have the pharaoh that was in rulership at the time of Moses. He got his shine, but why? Because it pertained to Israel. You had other pharaohs too as well, like in the book of Ezekiel and things of that nature. But my main point is that most of the kings of the other nations are not chronicled in the scriptures because it just didn't have an effect on us. But since these kings in these wars had an effect on us, as you see, we're mainly, we either being conquered or, part of the lands that were taken over. That's why it's being chronicled here in the scriptures, because it's always written. The scriptures are written from an Israelite standpoint, or from an Israelite point of view. Now, hopefully what I'm saying here makes sense. So if the scriptures were for everyone, why is it written for us, by us and for us? All right. So it says here, verse 10, and there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king. So that's Antiochus the third, Antiochus the king right here, who had been a hostage at Rome. Remember in the Treaty of Apamea, where it says that Antiochus Epiphanes, he was a hostage. So that already, screwed him up in the head, because he'd been a hostage, for, I believe, around at least 10 years or so when he was a hostage. I think even longer. It says, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. So a wicked man. Like, you read about his accounts all over the book of Maccabees, which again we're going to get into. But what made him even more wicked than the other kings is that it was really a custom of the Seleucids to kind of let Israel do their own thing. So when it came to keeping the law, meaning keeping the dietary law, keeping the feast days, keeping the Shabbat or the weekly Sabbath, mostly the Seleucids didn't interfere with that, meaning that they didn't make any major rules or impose upon the Israelites that were looking to keep the law. So they let them do their own thing. But when it came to Antiochus the fourth, Epiphanes, he wasn't like that. He wanted everybody to keep the Greekish customs. And he wanted everybody to eat swine and just straight go off. And he profaned the altar. He profaned the sanctuary with swine's blood, or in everything holy to us. So that's what made him, this wicked root. And that's why he was mentioned, because while he was in rulership, it was a dark time for the children of Israel, which really was one of the main things that sparked that warrior spirit in the Maccabees, or Judas Maccabees and his brothers and all the different soldiers in Israel at that time, or the Hasidians. Okay, because of the harsh rulership that Antiochus Epiphanes and everything that came with his rulership. All right. Verse 11, in those days went there out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So you see, now you have wicked men in Israel that's saying, let's make a covenant with the heathen. And the same thing is being done today. Like a lot of our people, we get confounded when we have, so-called black people that, we call coons and sellouts and things like that. Well, they made a covenant with the heathen. This is not anything new, so you shouldn't really be confounded. Like during the Kyrie Irving escapade last year, I believe it was last year. You had so many, people that was confounded that Shaq called him an idiot and all these different things. But I mean, this is not anything new. Just because somebody is so-called black does not mean that, they on our side. Especially people like a Shaq that you already know that he's fully compromised. All these people are compromised, man. So you can't be surprised at all. I'm never shocked with, like, even if it's Kyrie Irving himself, like, I'm not shocked at nothing he say or do. Because when you in the entertainment world, you do have to make a compromise. That's just what it is. If you're gonna be on the, if you're gonna be on the airways, the so-called white man's, television is broadcast on the major networks, then you can't say or do what you want. That's not anything new. Okay, verse 12. So this device pleased them well. Verse 13. Then certain of the people were so for herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Verse 14. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathen. Verse 15. And made themselves uncircumcised. So they made themselves uncircumcised. You know what that mean? They was putting foreskin back on their penises, man. It says, and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen and were sold to do mischief. So we actually gonna cut it off there because we kind of go into some of the verses of Daniel chapter 11 now. I want to do that all at the same time. But I just want to do an introduction to Antiochus IV Epiphanes and wanted to talk briefly on why he was wicked, or not why he was wicked, but why the scriptures, call him the wicked root. All right, and that's it for now. Lord willing, by the next upload, which Lord willing will be in 2 weeks or sooner, we'll go in, we'll finish everything out, and I'll have that document ready. But Lord willing, this was edifying. And until the next time, I bid everyone a mighty shalom.